Hey, everybody. Welcome to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. That's me. I'm always here with producer Zoe. Howdy, Zoe.
Hey, Michael. How's it going?
It is going. We are wrapping up the Venus retrograde this week. We're coming at you for the week of 24th of January through the 30th. Man, oh, man. What a process to unpack. Actually, we can't really unpack it. I keep saying, let's unpack it, but we're really not done. There's a lot of potential for stuff to come up emotionally this week as Venus has pretty much stopped moving. She's standing still in the sky, getting ready to turn around and go retrograde this weekend. And that finishes the backwards passage, but we do still have one more rather intense emotional week to get through. There is nobody on this planet that has not been directly impacted by this particular Venus retrograde. Now, Venus retrograde happens every couple of years. I've been paying attention to them for the past 25 years. I have a lot of experience of what these feel like in the body. And this one was brutal, or is. Okay, I keep thinking it's over. It's like my fantasy projection, like it's over.
You're like, it's over. Wait, no, JK, I cannot say that professionally.
No, that's
soon.
right, it's not. Well, I'll say this. Personally, I had a rough time of this Venus retrograde because it crossed my south node of karma. It squared my moon, so I was in karmic facing deep shit there. For me personally, it's about anxious attachment and how I relate to others when intimacy feels vulnerable and the stakes are a little higher.
And I think that's something really important to point out. Maybe you're a new listener or you're new to astrology. Whenever something happens, your chart matters as well. So your experience can be different. My experience can be different from Michael's, can be different from yours or your best friend.
That's right. And one of the reasons why I speak the language that I do in this podcast is to help the listener be able to project more generally what I'm saying, right? So I'm not the astrologer that gives you 7 examples about how a square between planets might play out. I use archetypal language like mind and communication. And I leave it to you, listener, to think about who you're talking to and what those conversations might be like when there's a communication challenge. And so with this Venus retrograde, I've been using the language giving and receiving of love, that we're all getting better at giving and receiving love by clearing out obstacles to the giving and receiving of love.
Right.
And for some people, it's a little bit more like, well, this one's designed just for you. And for someone else, it might be, yeah, not so bad this time, right? So yes, my personal one was rough, but I'm also very dialed into thousands of people's experience that I get, shown through sessions, emails, DMs, and comments on social media. And all of that informs how I teach and how I present. So I saw a lot more sort of rough emotional patches, lots of grief, lots of processing emotional difficulties, especially as it related to intimacy and relationships, more so than, say, the last one that happened in Gemini, 18 months ago. Part of why that is, astrologically speaking, is the presence of Pluto in Capricorn and the fact that both Mercury and Venus in their preparation for going retrograde and then their backward journey had a connection to the planet that brings death and rebirth, utter change and transformation. So this one meant a little more business because Venus started out by hanging out with Pluto directly for the, like 10 days back as the year was turning and she was getting ready to turn around. So that these last few weeks and the week ahead where she finishes up, it's like she took her marching orders from the planet of death and transformation and, said, this one counts. So what's funny, or maybe not funny may not be the right, word here, but what is synchronistic and ironic is that Venus this week is hanging out in a trine with Uranus, the great awakener, and the other agent of change. Uranus is at 10-ish degrees, 10, 11 degrees of Taurus, and Venus is at 11 degrees of Capricorn, and she's been at 11 degrees of Capricorn, and she will stay at 11 degrees of Capricorn all week. Then she will turn around on Saturday and stay at 11 degrees of Capricorn for a few more days until she starts moving again. Right? So that means this
That's a while.
That's a while. That's a long while.
Stint.
Well, and she did the same thing with Pluto in December. She's doing this with Uranus here in January. The trine, the 120-degree angle, is the most open flow that two energies can meet in. It's like harmony. They both get to sing at the top of their voice. So what's Venus singing? She's singing, I love. And what's Uranus saying? I change. Pluto changes things slow, deeply, irrevocably, down to the level of molecular restructuring. So those changes, though slow and lugubrious in a way, are deeply permanent and foundational. Uranus changes things very suddenly, the kind of unexpected changes that come from inspiration, if it's from the inside out, or the unexpected event that rises up all of a sudden and changes your life or, changes the moment rather dramatically, right? Mm-hmm. Fortunately, this is ultimately a positive transit. I say that with a little sing-songy tone of voice because astrology doesn't distinguish between what we might call good and bad. Uranus just wants us to wake up. Mm-hmm. So if that is best suited through an unexpected event that lights up your heart and lets more love in, that's possible this week. Amen. Have at it. More power to you. If you're, and this is where your personal chart plays in, if you're in an experience right now that demands more work below the surface, Uranus might just come along and bring the unexpected difficulty that helps you do the deeper work in this last week while Venus is still turned around and we have access to the below, the feelings and the emotional structures that are typically untouchable because they're slightly below the surface of our conscious awareness. So the whole week could feature interesting and important and sudden and unexpected ways that your heart is receiving information about the process you are in. It should be a pretty interesting weekend up ahead because on Saturday, Venus turns around, and I think in some ways that we're going to feel that or have experiences that reflect an end of a cycle or the shift in how we feel our emotions. On the same day, the Sun and Uranus are going to be squaring each other this weekend, actually the next day. But this weekend, as Venus is turning around, we are also having this kind of electrified conscious awareness experience of something sudden and unexpected, the anything can happen energy. Sun, conscious awareness in conflict energy, square, with the part of us that understands sudden jumps in awareness. Now, this is conflict geometry, not comfortable and unlikely to be something you were thrilled and happy to have come along. But it's an interesting zingy energy of unexpected energy while you've got the planet of love turning around and moving forward while trining the planet of unexpected energy.
So are we thinking secret admirers, or we're just saying, or it's just you'll have some oomph to deal with this love that you've been thinking about?
Well, and in the spirit of something that we're actually addressing in this podcast, I keep the language general so that everyone listening can apply the idea of something unexpected and sudden that impacts your emotional intimacy journey. If you're listening to this podcast, you should know exactly what that means for you. And then, yeah, the secret admirer is an adorable sort of example because that could happen, right? But anything showing up suddenly was likely to occur. I would even just say Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, that whole little swath of approaching the weekend, moving through the weekend has this profound completion of a heartfelt journey, and it sort of finishes with a bang or a lightning flash, if you will. I would love to offer something to y'all about this weekend and the finish of the Venus retrograde, but I'm reminded of the 70s. There was this commercial for a toupee company called Hair Club of America. The guy who did the commercials, has this full head of hair, but then at the end of the commercial, he says, "I'm not just the president, I'm a customer." And then you see the picture with his bald head, and he's like, "Get your toupee like me." So it's like, I'm not just the president of the astrology this week, I'm also a customer. Like, I'm so grateful that this cycle is going to end on Saturday, that I'm so in it that I don't have a more like objective, teachery thing to say about it other than it is over this weekend and we have all of February, like the rest of January, all of the few days that are left, and all of February and a couple of days into March to wrap up what we experienced and learned in the retrograde. And so that's going to be a key segment in podcasts for the next 6 weeks as we figure out in Venus's direct motion what we need to put into place or shift or change or adjust in our emotional interior and our connection experience that we might know more about because of everything that we learned in December and most of January. There's also a lot going on this week with Mercury's retrograde. So the idea that both retrogrades are happening simultaneously is also part of this week's experience. And just in a general way, let's acknowledge that with both Venus and Mercury, mind and heart turned within in backward motion, that we will have a challenging week simply because of that. But if we go a little bit more specifically into what Mercury is doing this week, there's a very kind of interesting opportunity over the weekend. As I've already indicated, there's a lot of shit going down over the weekend.
Yeah, apparently.
No, it's an explosive burst of energy that now also includes a communication and Mercury moment that I think is valuable. It's Mercury connecting to Pluto. And if you've been following, I'm hoping, even if you don't follow the astrology language as well as, you will one day if you keep listening, Pluto has been key in both Venus's and Mercury's retrograde. And so when Mercury connects to Pluto, the value for us is that we have an awareness to communicate about or think about or ruminate about matters that are typically too far into the shadow for us to be able to think about, ruminate on, or communicate about. So just having a Mercury retrograde cycle that includes a conjunction to Pluto means it's a more deeply transformative Mercury retrograde cycle. Not to overcomplicate it, but then a Venus retrograde cycle with a conjunction to Pluto, therefore, has a greater capacity to change and transform our experience. Right? So Venus isn't anywhere near Pluto right now, but she'll back up again, or, in her last act to meet up and finish with him. But Mercury is there this week. That means we are also being treated to some capacity to know, speak into, connect to intellectually something about the depth of our process. One way this can play out is if you have like rich, deep, juicy conversations that might be scary and involve power and facing your power and authority issues and standing up and speaking your mind anyway, that's a Mercury-Pluto kind of example. By the same token, Mercury and Pluto could be helping to reveal something that is shadowy and scary and confronting that you will have to grapple with. And because Mercury is backwards still, this is his retrograde trigger of the underworld, of the shadow, which means we're not figuring something out or wrapping something up, but we might be having an important awareness or set of communication experiences that reflect this change and transformation that's going on and our willingness to be more courageous with the shadow, with the underbelly, with the frightening emotions and thoughts that are swirling around. It's like, this is the cycle that matches the quote, speak your truth even if your voice shakes.
Wonderful.
So 2 things I want to say about this is the weekend includes interesting possibilities for deep connection or awarenesses that are, shadowy and worthy of Pluto's participation. But it's a retrograde moment, which means there was a first hit of this back on December 30th. That's when Pluto and Mercury met up as he was moving forward. He's like, hey, let's talk shadow. And Pluto says, yep, I'm here. I was just hanging out with Venus. And he's like, well, great, Mercury says. Me too. Let's change everything. Let's change thoughts and hearts and minds and intimacy and attachment anxieties and all the stuff. So look back to December 30th, give or take a day or two, and you might be hip to some theme that might come up over this weekend. Because Venus was with Pluto back in December, and she's finishing up her retrograde on pretty much the same day that Mercury is meeting with Pluto, there really is a direct energetic connection to what the mind and the intellect is ready to integrate and understand at a deeper level as we move through this weekend. And then as Mercury finishes his retrograde, turns around and goes direct and meets up with Pluto again on February 10th. That is sort of the final exclamation point to what we're learning about how to communicate while also staying open and vulnerable to the high stakes matters of the heart so that we can do that better and be, as I said at the top, better givers and receivers of love. All right. So I have clearly set you all up for an anticipation of a powerful and important weekend. So let me give the sort of last overview energetic experience that I think will encapsulate everything else that's going on energetically during those sort of 3 powerhouse days of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The Aquarius sun is going to sextile Chiron in Aries over the weekend. So you've got the Mercury-Pluto conjunction on Friday. Then you've got the Sun and Uranus square on Sunday. Then Saturday is the day that Venus turns around and the Aquarius sun is going to sextile Chiron in Aries. That's the wraparound piece.
Mm.
Solar transits are always about expanding our conscious awareness. The planetary movement will illuminate what are we processing and integrating and shifting and working on and healing and facing and bumping into. And the sun's movement says, how are we integrating what we're learning, what we're knowing, how we are, becoming more conscious? And so to have a weekend where all of this stuff is happening and the retrogrades are really continuing, so we're not at a aha moment exactly. We're still in deep process and we're being given insight and information about that process this weekend. To have the sun in a sextile with Chiron means that the overarching conscious awareness energy of the weekend is healing.
Beautiful.
Integrating, putting stuff together, making sense from a chironic perspective, meaning turning our wounded spaces into healed spaces, not by taking away the wound, but by transforming how we perceive the wound. That's Chiron's game, if you will. So Sun and Chiron is like a blanket of healing available. And solar transits pretty much take 3 days to play out. So if this transit hits on Saturday, that means it's shining its light on Friday and Sunday as well. And the real important message here, though, is it's a sextile. A 60-degree relationship is the geometrical equivalent of productivity and creativity. Two energies that work in this dynamic can make much happen if they are picked up. But if the energies are not picked up, nothing's going to happen. It'll just pass you right by. So in this equation, we're talking about behaviors and actions that support and facilitate a healing experience. Meaning, if you're in some side of a relational lesson because of Venus and Mercury retrograde, and you move into these couple of days, and the healing that's available might require a difficult conversation. If you shrink back from the action that might facilitate the healing's not going to happen through the ethers. A sextile says that anything you desire is possible if you pick up action and behaviors. So that could be anything that feels like a healing act, whether it's private work, ritual work, writing in your journal, doing your dream work, calling your friends, seeing your therapist, doing your meditations, planning your year, blah, blah, blah. That list is endless.
Right. Different for each person.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly right. Different for each person. But the opportunity is there to receive a greater benefit from all of the ways this clusterfuck of planets over the weekend is actually offering interesting information from below the surface. This transit says a healing is possible if you pick up the right tools to facilitate it. Have at it, everybody.
All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show. We have a call-in dreamer today for our dream segment, and we have Anne, who's calling from Glasgow, actually.
Oh, woohoo! Welcome,
yeah, an
Anne.
international dreamer. Anne, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell us about your dream?
Hi. So I've had this dream since I was younger, and it's not exactly the same every single time. but it basically focuses on me running away from some sort of prison or concentration camp run by Nazis. You never see their face, you never see them, but I know somehow that they're Nazis. I'm always with different people. I'm always hiding in different places, but it's that same feeling that I'm terrified and I'm scared and I don't want to be caught. So I've had this dream for such a long time. I'd be very happy if you could explain it to me.
So when you say that you've had it for a long time, did it start when you were a child?
Yeah, when I was maybe about 4 or 5. So I'm 24 now.
Okay, so 20 years ago when you were 4 or 5, can you imagine where this particular image might have risen up for you at 4 or 5? What did you know about Nazis in Glasgow at 4 or 5 years old?
So this is the thing, like I didn't. And in the dream, you don't ever see the people that I'm running from, but I know that I just know that they're Nazis, which is so
Hmm.
bizarre. You never see them in the dream, but I'm hiding from them.
I suppose a cynic would say that you had to have been exposed somewhere at 4 years old to the idea of Nazis or prison camp or concentration camp in order for it to show up in your dream space. But I'm mystical enough to be like, well, not necessarily, because through the dream state, we are connected to the collective. Our waking mind is the part of us that keeps us separate, right? That thinks that I'm in a body over here, and that's different than you and your body over there. We're different, we're separate. That's a mind construct. But when we go to sleep, the mind is asleep. So there aren't the same limitations. So the idea that you as a child might have been tapping into literal experiences on the planet that occurred before you were born, a past life sort of a consideration. This is not where I go firsthand, with dreams. I don't go to the woo woo first. But it is interesting to me that you don't have a waking life association with this particular image, and yet it rose up pretty powerfully. What is happening with this dream, though, is it is a kind of standard stress dream. Everybody has some version of a recurring dream that allows them in their sleeping state to connect to fear, limitation, lack, doubt, all the things that our demons as humans will show up with some standard process stream. For some people, it's the tsunami or a shark or the person with a gun, or in this case, feeling like you're running, feeling like in order to save yourself, you have to outrun this unknown, unseen, unfaced, enemy. Because it recurs and has recurred, then we know that it's a standard dream that allows you to process those stressful feelings anytime your waking life offers you something challenging. Are you still periodically having this dream?
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense what you're saying because now I'm connecting that when I am feeling overly stressed, I do tend to have that dream.
Oh, yeah, of
So
course. In fact, what I would say to people is when you have the dream, the work is to look around at your waking life and ask yourself, well, what might be sparking this dream? Why am I in this moment needing to process some stress in my sleep so that I can wake up and face the stresses of the waking life? And that's what we do with dreams sometimes. They're like compensatory in that way. They allow us to actually face the stress of our waking life because in our sleeping domain, we marinate with the very fearful experience that stress is generating. This idea that we're not safe.
the human brain is just amazing that it can do that.
But I still can't quite get past this sort of juicy specificity about this image that does not relate. I'm going to assume then you're probably not Jewish. You're probably
No,
not historically, generationally connected to Nazis or concentration camps.
nothing at all, which is what my sister was saying to me, but we don't have any sort of Jewish people or anything in our family. It was kind
Right.
of weird though, because I lived in Poland for a little bit during the summer there. And that dream was like every night that I got that same dream. But I was also really stressed with work and stuff. So maybe it was that. But when I was there, it was much more vivid.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
I love that from this mystical place where it's like, we don't always know what's going on here because the mystery is so much greater than the actuality. So the idea that when in Poland, the vibration of this idea rises up more because that is a geographical location where there were lots of concentration camps and lots of, Nazi activity. Listen, I'm willing to go out on a limb and say something in this dream is bleeding into your connection to past life sensibility that is not necessarily your own, but then allows you to sort of combine a regularly occurring stress dream that helps you function more powerfully by visiting stressful places in your dream state, but also this mystical connection to something that is beyond what your embodied life as a 24, 25-year-old Glasgowian might be experiencing. Wow.
That's mad. Yeah, the stress part really, really does make sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That should be very specific.
See, I didn't know whether or not it would have been symbolic of like power or something that I was afraid of, or control or something like that. But
well, and the answer to those questions or considerations, Anne, won't be from the dream content, but from the waking life experiences that stimulated the dream. That's where you can get some insight about what's up when this dream rises up, is that the next time it does, identify what the stressor is in your life and see, is it a power thing? Is it that you feel disempowered in those moments and therefore a power differential like Nazi and hunted human is what the dream is reflecting? Because that's definitely a power struggle image. But the satisfying answer to how it relates is not to be gotten from the dream content, but from what's happening in your waking life the next time you have the dream.
Thank you so much. You have answered my lifelong query.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for sharing it with us, Anne.
Thanks for calling in.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the Daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.